I tell people I'm the laziest biohacker because I don't have a whole lot of patience. This is why I seek shortcuts, right? I seek shortcuts in a lot of things in my life. I want to put out the least amount of effort and get the best results. And that's why I'm doing stem cell therapy, because to me, that is the biggest bang for your buck.
Today I'm joined by Dr. Joy Kong, a UCLA trained triple board certified physician and one of the most well known voices in regenerative and stem cell medicine. Dr. Kong is the founder and CEO of Chara Health and the president of the American Academy of Integrative Cell Therapy, where she trains physicians from around the world in ethical, evidence based regenerative medicine. She also runs a longevity and regenerative medicine clinic in Los Angeles focused on advanced cellular therapies, peptides, and integrative approaches to health. She received multiple awards for her work in stem cell medicine, has published clinical research, and is a passionate educator, hosting a podcast, a YouTube channel also, teaching doctors globally, and helping shape how regenerative medicine is practiced today. I'm excited to dive into her work, what the science really says about stem cells, and where this field is heading next. Welcome, Dr. Kong.
Oh, thank you so much, Lucas. So happy to be here.
Great. So let's hear a little bit about your background. How did you get into the longevity field?
Probably started with my dissatisfaction of the current way medicine was practiced. So that was back 10 years ago. Of course, I grew up in China, so I intuitively understood that there are different ways of approaching the body. One is going down, on the granular level, a very organ based and all the way down to cell based or even chemical, chemical based. The other way is to zoom out and looking at the body as variety of systems intersecting and interacting. And then there are emerging properties between these different systems. And there are possibly energy channels running through the body that's connecting different organs. So these are two very diverging perspectives, and both have merits because obviously there are a lot of people in China. The population is thriving. It's good longevity, and same as Japan and India, right? There's a different way of looking at the body without Western medicine. But I love science. I grew up on a university that's the top university in science and technology. So I've always loved the rigorousness of scientific studies and how it's dissecting the world and coming up with answers that shows how the physical world works. So both aspects I've seen benefits in. Chinese medicine has saved my mom's life, who was struggling with a blood cancer. So I always felt that there's a way to integrate the two and bring both them to enhance human health, but both are such diverging perspectives and so different in their language. If you don't even speak the same language, it's going to be very difficult to integrate the two. I'm not talking about the Chinese language versus English language. I'm talking about the scientific or the expression of these two branches. So they're so different. One is poetic, one is very formularistic. So what I practiced was Western medicine at the time because I went to UCLA. Of course, I got traditional training, but I never forgot the Chinese root. And I, went to a Chinese, what is it, East-West medicine clinic. So it was attempting to integrate the two, but I saw the limitation of how it was not a true integration. It was side by side coexistence. So I saw how my patients were not helped adequately. They have mental health issues. The Western medicine is very much segregating different organs. So because we're talking about mental health, that all we were looking at was the brain. And we're looking at different receptors and different pathways of information. And that wasn't helping people enough. It was helping them to some extent, but it's forgetting how everything else is affecting the brain. It's something as simple as nutrients. It's connecting different organs, but we were not trained in nutrition or hormones. We were not talking about hormones except for thyroid hormone. We it's obvious. All these hormones, estrogen, progesterone. I mean, there's so many hormones in the body. They all affect the brain. Even vitamin D is a hormone, and we obviously we're not addressing other things like energy. Grounding. I mean, that's just energy from the earth, right? All this is commonplace now in integrative medicine, but it was not part of the traditional medicine world. So there was an inadequacy in how much of the potential for healing that we were embracing. And then on top of it is that I wanted to enhance my own health. I didn't want to um, age in a sense where I would face illness, right? Because aging is the closest indicator to a disease. So I didn't want to get sick. I want to live optimally. I wanted to feel great. Look great is a side effect of feeling great and being vibrant. And there was we were not trained in feeling great. We were trained in what to do when we get sick. So I had to search it for my patients for a more comprehensive view of their body. So enhancing their health, even mental health specifically, because I was specializing in psychiatry. And then enhancing my own health. So that's what led me to functional medicine. Functional medicine, it's really, I think it's a different way of expressing what integrated medicine is, or it's very similar to anti-aging medicine, holistic medicine. It's all the same branch of medicine, really. So from there, that's when stem cells even came to my vision field, because doctors in these specialties are way more open on other forms of medicine. So when I heard about how stem cells were able to help something like autism, that's the first case I heard about. Of course, as a
Mm.
psychiatrist, I was treating autistic kids and I saw how frustrating it was. It was not effective. It was pulling teeth, trying to make any kind of improvements. But this doctor, who was an anesthesiologist, who had nothing to do with psychiatry, he was able to give a simple IV infusion, putting something in the veins. I was throwing all kinds of drugs at these kids, with very limited success. He did one treatment that lasted for less than an hour, giving some kind of cells into this kid's body, and the kid made monumental improvements that would take years if I could even make it happen. That would take years to make a difference. But within months, less than 2 months, this kid was making drastic improvements. So if you are a thinking doctor, if you have any intellectual curiosity, you will ask yourself, what have I been missing? What are in these cells that could do these things that the 20 medications I'm throwing at the kid cannot make happen, right? So that's what drove me, is the curiosity that I've got to understand these cells. I've got to find out how they do this. So that's what led me.
Very fascinating background, and I love hearing how you got to this point. And you mentioned so many interesting things to unpackage, but I think to keep on course. So, I want to talk about your mom. I want to talk about these autistic children a little bit more, but I'm going to try to keep on course and move forward with stem cells, because I think that's what the audience would love to hear right now. Is can you tell us a little bit more? What are stem cells?
Yeah, stem cells is the first cell. I mean, we have lots of cells in our body, and there are stem cells, but the very first cell of who you were. I don't know if you know, everyone should remember we were once a single cell. So when your mom and dad got together and made that fertilized egg, that was you. So all you
Mhm.
were was that cell. But from that one cell, for whatever reason, it was able to unpack the information from that DNA. So from that one cell, it was able to make all these copies of itself, and each copy started to make interesting copies of themselves, because the quintessential character of a stem cell is that it's able to form asymmetrical uh, division. So when it multiplies and make one copy of itself that's identical, it's going to make another copy that's just a little different. It's more differentiated. By differentiation, it means gaining function. It gains function by expressing different proteins, so it can interact with the environment differently. So from that one cell is making a more useful copy of itself. But its original self is very important to preserve so that it can keep doing, right, supplying the new, more differentiated self. So it never completely drain itself. It keeps a copy, but it's making new copies that gains function. And that new copy, let's just say the first fertilized egg, it makes a new copy. And it makes one copy identical to itself, another copy that's a little different. And that copy that's a little different, it's going to make one copy that's identical to itself, and another copy that's a little different. So you can see this chain of cells. You are going to preserve some of the very original cells, although there's an attrition rate as we age, but you keep making new copies until you make a copy that is a working cell of an organ, because each organ will have cells that has it perform particular function. And that's the end stage cell. So that's a working cell. That's not a stem cell anymore. But anywhere before you can reach the end working cell is a stem cell. So when we're talking about stem cell therapy, we're talking about this 1,000 grades of variation. Anywhere you intercept, there could be a cell that has the potential to make a copy of itself and then make a copy that's a little bit different. That's a little bit more differentiated. So that's what we're talking about here. The stem cells have all the information that your body needs to basically make a full human being.
And just to, I think these terms are tossed around. What's the difference between a stem cell and PRP and exosomes?
PRP is what you get from your own blood. So it's called platelet-rich plasma. So when a doctor draws your blood, the doctor will spin it down to get the plasma portion. So get rid of your cells, the red blood cells, white blood cells, and the plasma portion will contain a lot of growth factors. So that's and it's rich in platelets. Platelets release growth factors. That's how you heal from your wounds. All the platelets aggregate and they release growth factors, and then you can start with wound healing. So that portion is rich in platelets, and if you spin it down further, it can get more and more concentrated. So that's what we're utilizing. It's just from your own blood, and it's the growth factors from the platelets that we're kind of counting on. But and there's some other elements in the blood that could be helpful, but the exosomes are what cells secrete to communicate with each other. So whether or not it's stem cells or other cells, they secrete exosomes. Of course, when you get exosomes from stem cells, that they are more potent because these have more growth factors, more information. What I think about stem cells is that they are not only they're able to make interesting copies of the self, but they're able to send you information that's not available by a working cell. So they are more upstream with more instructions. So exosomes is a packet of instructions. You're never going to get good exosomes without the stem cells. So the stem cells are the mothers of the exosomes. The exosomes, even though it's a hot topic right now, they're very helpful. It's how cells communicate with other cells, because what exosomes are is a bilipid layer enclosed little vesicle. So the cells will form this vesicle and put all this interesting information in there, including little RNA pieces, lipids, and nucleic acids, and then growth factors, so little pieces of protein or peptides. So we'll package them into these little circles, little bubbles, and then pinch them off the cell surface, and they float into space and they can fuse with other cells to promote some kind of benefit. So the exosomes are a very important way that stem cells interact with the world, but it's not the only way. The cells can send signals into the extracellular space without packaging them into the exosomes. And they can send mitochondria, so these little packets don't have mitochondria. The cells can do way more than what the exosomes can do, because that's where the origin is. So think of exosomes as a packet of little medications the cells send out. The cells are like a eye pharmacy, right? Like like intelligent pharmacy that I'm giving to your body. The pharmacy is so smart that it knows where to go and it knows what to give you by packaging a lot of information into these little packets like emissaries. They're the delivery trucks that I send out to give you all the information. But I can give you information in other ways. So exosomes can never replace stem cells. Exosomes is way more powerful than PRP. PRP just your own growth factors that's released and that's in your blood. It cannot compare to what exosomes can do because these are upstream information that's very powerful. So these are the differences.
That's a nice way it's a nice analogy about the pharmacy, little pharmacy. So thank you for differentiating that. And what are sources of stem cells? Going back to stem cells. So where can you get stem cells from? Where do they come from?
Of course, you can get stem cells from the very beginning, right? The embryonic stem cells. But people confuse embryonic stem cells with umbilical cord stem cells. They sound a little similar, but embryonic is when the embryo was forming. So that's collected day 5 to 7 of after fertilization. And that is not used clinically in the US. So no one is using embryonic stem cells in the United States because we cannot control how they work, especially in the sense that they can go haywire and produce a ball of um, uncontrollable tissue
Mhm.
growth with different variety of tissues all in one ball. And that is a risk that is not contained in umbilical cord stem cells. So that's a risk that has been kind of filtered out as the cell keep evolving and become more downline in a sense. So the embryonic stem cells have been used in some places in the world, but is not allowed in the US. They do studies. You can conduct scientific studies on these cells, but is not used on people clinically. And the other sources are, like I mentioned, umbilical cord stem cells. So umbilical cord uh, contains a lot of different variety of stem cells. You can get cells from the cord blood, which is full of mostly premature immune cells, but they also have some mesenchymal stem cells. They have endothelial progenitor cells. They have fibroblasts. So they have a variety of really, really interesting and helpful cells that, of course, help promote the regeneration in the baby. And then there's umbilical cord tissue cells that's full of mesenchymal stem cells. We can talk a little bit more about mesenchymal stem cells, probably the most studied cell type in the world and considered gold standard right now. And there are also embryonic membrane that also produce different kinds of cells, especially mesenchymal stem cells. And the cells reside in the membrane as well. You can use the membrane for wound healing, for a lot of things. You can extract the cells from the membrane. And then the next category is cells from your own body. So if you're 40 years old, then we can get cells from you that will be 40 years old. So you will have stem cells in your body from all your tissues. Anywhere you have tissues, you're going to have stem cells that help with regeneration. Some have more, some have less, but you can get cells, for example, from fat. The fat have a lot of stem cells because the fat supplied by blood vessels, and there are a lot of cells that are residing along the blood vessels or in the uh, matrix. Um, of course, there are fat cells. We're not giving you fat cells. We're giving you cells extracted from the fat tissue. And then there's the bone marrow stem cells, where the bone marrow hosts a lot of stem cells. And that's when you have a major trauma, the cells will be mobilized from the bone marrow and they will circulate in your blood and find the places where you need repair. And then they will exert their benefits. So your own stem cells will be your age, and it will be have gone through some kind of deterioration that, along with the rest of your body, they are vulnerable. There are some subgroup of cells in your body that may be more preserved, so they're less. They're a little bit more immune to these degradations, but they're very, very tiny group of cells with very limited numbers. But majority of the cells you get from your bone marrow, cells you get from your fat, is going to have a deterioration along with you because of all the damages that we've accumulated. So these cells can be very helpful in rejuvenation, but they have less generations left as far as being able to multiply, make more copies of itself. And they have less differentiation potentials because as you grow further down the line, you're becoming cells of a particular tissue. You have gained function and lost potential. So that's the way nature works. If you want to become specialized, then you are not going to be as generalized. Just like as doctors, once you decide to specialize in a specialty, you are foregoing your ability to become super knowledgeable in every other area, right? You can't do both. So same thing with cells. So these cells in different tissues would have lost some potentials, and they will also have lost some of the potentials to recognize cancer. Younger cells, like cells from the umbilical cord, can recognize cancer and get rid of them. But that potential has reduced. Not that it's gone, because other forms of cells have been used for anti-cancer treatment, but they have less of that capability, and sometimes they can promote cancer growth. This is why I do not use cells from a person's own body, because of that potential that they can exacerbate existing cancer. And we know all of us have cancerous cells popping out here and there. It just our immune system is strong. When our immune system is strong, we can get rid of them. But if you add exogenous, external stimulus to make all cells grow, including cancer cells, without recognizing them and telling them to die, then you are really raising your risk for exacerbating cancer. So that is something I would not want to put my patients through.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about induced pluripotent stem cells? Is that something that you think would be on the horizon for people to use to in a way to make their
I think so. I think if we figure out how to harness them, that we can do that. I think wouldn't that be amazing? Because when I first read about them, I thought, oh my God, this is a holy grail. From the same person, we can turn cells back into the embryonic state. Now we can do anything we want with that embryonic state cell. Unfortunately, the induced pluripotent stem cells have similar cancer risk in the sense that it promotes new cancer formation. So your body's own existing cells can make new cancer, like the teratoma, but it can promote existing cancer. But if you have embryonic stem cells or induced pluripotent stem cells, they have the potential to go haywire and make new tumor. So that's something we still haven't been able to figure out, partially because how we're inducing these cells. We're using viral vectors, and that can, and then using particular um, uh, cell signaling molecules to bring these cells back. And we have not been able to fully control these cells. So that's one reason it's not widely used.
Okay, so now let's get into, I guess, what people are probably waiting for the most is, so what can these stem cells be used to treat? Can you give a few examples of
Okay, I'm gonna use not going to use the word
right?
treat unless it has been FDA approved. So as a doctor, and I have to be very
Okay.
careful, um, I never make claims for treating a condition that FDA has not approved for. Stem cells, however, have been approved for a limited applications. The group of applications it's been approved for, one is for hemoreconstitution. So in circumstances like cancer or autoimmune diseases, one of the treatments is to wipe out your immune system because that's your immune system is considered defective. So they will wipe it out and then repopulate your system with new stem cells to form a whole new blood system with the new progenitor cells, new stem cells to keep regenerating the blood system. And so that's one. The other one is the FDA did approve stem cell therapy for pediatric graft versus host disease that's resistant to existing therapies. So it's very limited, right? Very strict application because that's what they did study on and got approval for. So unless it's one of these conditions, then what we're doing is considered off-label use, right? It's is what we can use this therapy on patients. We can help patients, but I'm never going to say we're going to treat a disease, but we can assist the patient's body in a variety of functions. So how do stem cells work? They are highly anti-inflammatory. They modulate your immune system, so they shift your immune system from more inflammatory to an anti-inflammatory state. They can rescue damaged tissue. They have that ability to prevent apoptosis, so they program cell death. So if a cell is damaged but don't have to die, sometimes it dies, like in stroke or crash injury, but it doesn't have to die. So cells can rescue these cells. The stem cells can rescue these cells. And then it also has pro-apoptotic properties, means that they can trigger cells to die, like in cancer cells. They have antimicrobial properties. So I'm actually talking mostly about mesenchymal stem cell because they have been proven to have these abilities. And they can kill microbes by secreting antimicrobial peptides, so they can directly kill them. And they can, of course, boost your immune system to fight these infections. And they have the ability to regenerate blood supply, blood vessels, so pro-angiogenesis. And they can also send out mitochondria to elevate the energy of your cells. So these are some of the major capabilities. Of course, they can trigger regeneration of your tissue. So sometimes they can differentiate into a cell, at the end stage working cell. Sometimes it can just tell your own cells, like in all your organs, you have cells that are the end stage stem cell. So they're waiting to become the working cell. The mesenchymal stem cells can trigger them to become a working cell. A lot of times your tissue is not regenerating because these cells are sitting in a toxic environment, are shut down, are in a, kind of a state of in a sleep. So these mesenchymal stem cells can go into that tissue and send just the right information to wake up these cells. All of a sudden, now you're regenerating because the studies have shown most of the time when you give people mesenchymal stem cells, they regenerate, right? The tissue repair, whether it's cartilage or heart. And then when they actually dissect the tissue, they realized the cells were not off the origin of the cells you gave. It's actually from the patient's own body, which is a proof that you have these stem cells coming in really as a messenger. So not as the final worker to become the cells that you are looking for. So that's something that's really important that a lot of people don't understand, even practitioners. It's really sad because we're supposed to be doctors and telling patients exactly what the truth is. But a lot of doctors have misled patients saying, well, I need to put the cells right where it is because these cells, otherwise, how are they going to differentiate? How are they going to become your own tissue? I'm sorry, they don't. So majority of the time, they don't. Maybe 98% of the time, no one knows exact percentage, but the vast majority from the research studies is that generally they don't. They send signals to tell your cells to work. So do you have to put the cells right where it is? No, the signals can travel everywhere. The stem cells are attracted to areas of inflammation and injury. And once it gets there, it can send all these signals to your organs to trigger the stem cells that's in that organ to start replicating. So yeah, so these are some of the mechanisms.
How that works. Can you talk maybe tell us about a few case studies where you've used off-label or one of your colleagues has used off-label stem cell to improve?
Yes, yeah. So if you're looking at what stem cells have been shown to be helpful for, in like patients with different
Yeah.
conditions, so definitely I've accumulated not only clinical studies that have shown these benefits, but also just clinical practice of me and all the doctors I've worked with, of all the cases that we've seen. What have we seen, right? What have we observed? Or first of all, what clinical studies have shown? Clinical studies, I have over 300 articles categorized by organ systems and disease categories. Research have looked into how stem cell therapy can help with different neurological issues. So from the neurodegenerative conditions, Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injury, uh, MS, Parkinson's, ALS, so all these brain conditions. Autism is sort of a brain condition. It's really a multi-system issue, but we have seen benefits in research of autoimmune conditions. A lot of autoimmune conditions have been studied. It's been very helpful. Clinically, we have seen great benefits when patients have different autoimmune issues, even ones that were not studied. Same thing with the brain. We have seen incredible benefits in patients. And then heart repair, um, things like cleaning up the arteries in atherosclerosis, in even reducing blood pressure. We've seen not so much in study, but in clinical practice. And lung recovery. So whether or not it's a lung fibrosis, the most common COPD, but different lung injuries, we have seen benefits either from research or clinical practice in liver recovery, from cirrhosis or some other, cholangitis, and which is inflammation of the bile duct. And we have seen benefits in kidneys, so kidney repair, helping to delay or even delay dialysis, or even having people coming off dialysis, which is absolutely astounding. And reproductive organs, I've seen in my clinic of helping people with fertility and helping with sexual organ damages like the testes. And we have seen benefits in musculoskeletal repair, whether or not is osteoporosis, bone necrosis, or just good old osteoarthritis or muscle injury, tendon injury, and different skin conditions. So just about every organ we have seen benefits in, even if that is caused by genetic issue. Because I always tell people I cannot change your genes unless I'm doing gene therapy. But what I can do is to help reverse some of the downstream tissue organ damage and the inflammation that's a result of your genetic issues. So in that sense, what I'm doing right now can help. I'm not talking about what's going on in the future, because this is a rapidly evolving field. People are doing incredible things, but a lot of times the incredible things are not in clinical practice because of how cautious the world is, and the regulatory agencies are making it difficult. So scientific breakthroughs are rarely translated into benefiting people's lives because of these obstacles. So yeah, but these are some of the major conditions that internal organs, outside, or for regenerating your skin, or even making a person more beautiful, right? Making your face, hair, better growth of hair, or even for sexual organs, for sexual wellness, enhancing not just the function, but also the look of sexual organs. So yeah, these are some of the major
So many
applications.
applications. What about aging, specifically biological aging? Anything there?
Yeah, that's a really important aspect, because research have shown that regular stem cell infusion in an animal, because it's we're much better at much easier to study aging in animals and lifespan in animals, because the rats and mice, they only live for about 20 months. But it's, you're going to be waiting for a very long time to study lifespan of humans. So in animal studies, when we give animals regular IV infusions of stem cells, they, on average, if you start at the middle age of animals, they live for about 30% longer. So that has been replicated. And even if you give it to older animals, so when they did studies on animals who are at the human equivalent age of 75, the amount of time that animals have left on Earth is extended three times as long. right? If they only have 1 month left, now they have 3 months left. So that also has huge implications for people who are aging, who are declining. And it's not only just the lifespan. They are looking much better. So they're running faster, their locomotion is better, and their cognition is preserved. So they're really extending vitality, not just the amount of time they have left.
Phenomenal. I'm sure there's some studies going on in humans. I know you can't do a time trial, but you can definitely do a trial over, before and after.
Yeah, there's anti-aging studies of how people are doing with stem cell infusions. So I saw one
Yeah.
study, even with one infusion, they've seen people reporting, within, they did track different times, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. So people have shown improved energy, improved uh, uh, like their skin condition, as far as the health of the skin, the youthfulness of the skin, hair, um, and even um, sexual desires. So had improved different indicators of vitality.
Okay. You mentioned that the best source. You don't like to use the patient's own stem cells. So do you do some sort of compatibility or genetic compatibility testing?
At this point, I haven't seen it as being necessary because now we're coming down to how the stem cells work. So if they don't need to stay in your body, but they are just going in as a messenger, sending you a blast of signals to help you regenerate, most of them will go away. At least 98%. No one can give the exact number,
Mhm.
but the general consensus by me talking with a variety of really top scientists in the field is that maybe 2-3% actually stay in the body. Majority of them will go away. So then you really don't have to worry about compatibility, because the only time you worry about compatibility is when the cells start to differentiate, because before they differentiate, they are blank cells. That's the nature of stem cells. The fact they're stem cells is because they are lacking all these functions. Lacking functions means lacking surface markers and receptors and of how they're going to work, how they're going to interact with the world. So they're kind of like blank cells. And that's why they can be given to another person. But if you're counting on the cells to uh, multiply and differentiate and stay in your body, then you're going to have to worry about the differentiation. For example, hemoreconstitution. When you put bone marrow transplant from one person to another, you're hoping that all these cells are going to survive and they're going to become the cells in the body of a new person, right? What's interesting is that when you give bone marrow transplant, you do have to match. Why? Because the bone marrow from one person, even though these are supposed to be stem cells, they have a high rate of rejection, even if you match them perfectly. So this is the difference between older cells and younger cells. So if you, as an adult, give somebody your bone marrow and you are perfectly matched with another person can still reject your cells and have this violent reaction. But if you give the person umbilical cord blood stem cells. Cord blood has very similar composition as the bone marrow, but that's from the umbilical cord blood, right? That's the blood that's flowing through, going into the baby at that early stage. Even if you don't match at all, you don't bother with any matching, there's less chance of rejection. So that's a vast difference between younger cells and older
Mhm.
cells. So yeah, so I wouldn't worry about rejection because most of them are just going to produce the signals and die. And in the rare cases that they do stay and they do differentiate and become something, one is that they don't have to differentiate. They can just stay what they were, right? The blank stem cells. But if they do differentiate, either one, your immune system will get rid of it because it's such a small quantity, your immune system can handle it. It may get rid of it. Or sometimes there's some kind of adaptation that they do. Just either they are very similar to your own composition, or your body adapt. The younger the cells are, the more adaptation. So we've seen even human cells stay long term on animals' body. So even cross species, they can stay. It's not necessarily going to happen that they're just going to be gotten rid of. So there's a possibility that they can learn to coexist with your body. So for these reasons, I don't see any reason to match at this point.
Okay. And sort of along these lines, are there any genetic, epigenetic, or other types of biomarkers that predict a better outcome when treating stem cells?
Not at this point. I think is more along the line of a patient's own condition, whether or not they are highly inflamed, very severe in their illness, especially if they have other issues going on. This is why my academy I founded is called American Academy of Integrative Cell Therapy. You can't just go along thinking, I have the best cells, I can give the cells to you, all problems we solved. If only life is that simple, right? But it's not. So you better respect how complex life is. Life is made up so many things. If you have pollutants in your body, you have all these contaminants and toxins in your body, that's going to prevent you from recovering from getting the best results. If you have a hormone deficiency and then the cells are just not getting the right signals from the hormones, then you're going to have also problems. So to change the hormone expression, that's going to take a very long time. So the best thing is to replenish those hormones so your cells can wake up and can start functioning normally. Something as simple as nutrition, right? The necessary amino acids and vitamins and minerals. If you don't have them, the cells are just going to be starving and can't function normally, even though you're blasting it with signals to tell them to repair. Well, I'm lacking magnesium, I'm lacking zinc, I can't do it. So all these are important. So these are factors that's going to be affecting how a person responds. That's why when people come to my clinic, we want to make sure that all these are addressed. And we try to be as comprehensive as possible to make sure that they are getting optimized as far as their body's ability to regenerate because of all these factors.
Sounds like you recommend that individuals have a solid foundation, right? Before.
Yeah, yeah. And underlying infections, don't forget, we are coexisting with an ocean of microbes and of little critters. Some live in our body, but a lot of them, a lot of them are not good. So, but they do come in, and if they're always there, they have a stronghold over your system, and if you don't address them, then they're always gonna just keep you down. So that needs to be addressed. So yeah, these are more crucial than uh, than some of the other concerns.
I have so many other questions, but we're winding down on time. So, what do you recommend people look for when they look at stem cell clinics?
First of all, make a decision on what type of cells you want to use, right? Do you want to use your own? My general principle is that if a person is less than 40 years old, I think it's possible that your own cells can do a great job. It's still not going to be as potent as umbilical cord cells, but if you want to use your own, I think that's fine. It's still going to be less powerful, but you can do that. But if you do choose to use something as young as umbilical cord cells, you want to look at what's the cell source, because research is really vibrant when it comes to mesenchymal stem cells, because these are the masters at regeneration. They are throughout your body. So every one of us, anywhere you have blood flow, you will have these cells. That's just kind of a holding on to the blood vessels. I always think of them as geckos that just holding on, and or amoebas. They're wrapping themselves around these blood vessels, waiting for action. They're sensing what's going on in your blood, and they're also having their pulse on the local environment. They touch the local stem cells, the other cells in the local area, and so they provide this overall coordinating effect of what's needed. And they can also, of course, respond to signals and squeeze themselves into the blood vessels and start to swim to where they're needed. So these cells are considered really, really kind of the gold standard right now as far as regeneration. But they dwindle as we age. So are you going to is your product high in mesenchymal stem cells? So that's something that's really important to consider. Yes, you can use cord blood stem cells, and they have a very, very tiny portion of mesenchymal stem cell. You can use those as well. But I think the best of both worlds is the product that I've developed, which contains not only the cord blood cells, which have been very powerful and very useful, but they lack mesenchymal stem cells. So what I use is a combination of mesenchymal stem cells from the cord tissue and the embryonic membrane, because both of those contain high concentrations of mesenchymal stem cells. And it's not just that they are um, high in this cell type, but even though they're all called mesenchymal stem cells, because they come from these two different tissue sources, they actually have different capabilities and different abilities to differentiate and send different growth factor sets. So now you're harnessing uh, cells with different potentials. So when you put them all together, it's going to be the most potent. So you want to see what your cell sources are. You want to see if you want to use older cells from your own body, or you want to use a younger cell type. But if you use younger cells, then are you using the comprehensive group of cells, or do you only want to use a subset? I always say that God created everything for a reason. So who am I to play God? That I'm saying that I'm only going to give you cells from this one particular part. So I want to give you cells that's included in the design, and that's why I really believe in the type of product that I'm giving to patients. So these are the things to consider, and also, are the cells expanded? So when I use stem cells, our cells have not gone through the expansion process, which means that they have not been put in a tissue culture and put in an incubator to allow them to multiply. Because the moment you allow them to multiply, they start to make genetic changes. So they, even with one passage, so you sit in an incubator for until the plate is full. Even with that first group of multiplication, there are genetic changes happening. So what does that mean? That means you are going to express different proteins that's consistent with the donor, and they are going to differentiate, and that can cause more rejection, and can also, so not only people are going to get more side effects, it can also create more inflammatory factors because you're stressing the cell. So the cells can secrete different proteins that are inflammatory, and that can trigger more side effects as well. So know your source. More is not better, because research have shown even when you multiply cells and you give people 10 times the number of what you give as far as native cells, that cells have not been expanded, the one that's multiplied at 10 times the number end up having less benefit than cells that have not been expanded. So then you're shooting yourself in the foot. You think that you're giving yourself more, so you're going to have more benefit. You actually get less benefit. So know your sources.
Fascinating. My final question for you is, what are maybe a couple things that you've implemented into your own health and longevity routine that have made a big difference, or the biggest differences?
I tell people I'm the laziest biohacker, because I don't have a whole lot of patience. This is why I seek shortcuts, right? I seek shortcuts in a lot of things in my life. I want to put out the least amount of effort and get the best results. And that's why I'm doing stem cell therapy, because to me, that is the biggest bang for your buck as far as anything that I could do for a patient. So for myself, of course, I'm doing the shortcuts. So I would say the thing that made the most difference for my life is stem cell IV infusion. So since I started 9 years ago, I've been giving myself IV stem cell infusions every 3 months. Once in a while, I do a little bit more frequently if I just if somehow I was catching a bug, or I just traveled and I feel like I want to give myself an extra boost. But in general, every 3 months, that's my longevity and vitality protocol. And besides that, of course, I actually practice what I preach. I give patients a set of supplements, a very limited set, because I don't have the patience to take a lot of things. And also, when you take a lot of things, that takes tremendous amount of monitoring and really understanding what you're putting in your body. If you're just blindly taking 30 supplements and you think they're all doing great things, but you have no idea how you're taking them, how they're interacting with each other, and if they were absorbed. And oftentimes it may not be the best thing. And compared to just giving your body the basic foundations of good health, and your body can use its own intelligence to create everything else. So I have very limited a few supplements that we give to patients as part of the protocol for stem cell therapy, and I take all of them myself. And besides that, the pre and post treatment recommendations I give patients, that's what I do, right? I'm always either pre or post treatment. So that's what I do every day, which means eating an anti-inflammatory diet, so eating healthy, um, and two, exercise, move your body, do something for your body. So it is has motion, and motion triggers gene expressions. So that actually is one of the best anti-aging methods is motion. And then third is gentle detox. So get rid of the toxins. First, don't expose yourself to them, including your household items or things you put on your face, which is why I started my stem cell cream, because it's completely void of these synthetic ingredients and toxins. It's called Chara Omni, and that's what I use every day for the last 5 years. People are shocked that I don't use sunscreen. Well, okay, until I find a really good sunscreen. Actually, I just found one that's actually really good. That's all natural. That's not it's not streaky. So, but before that, for 5 years, I was not using sunscreen. But how come my skin is so good? Because I eat an anti-inflammatory diet, right? I'm not exposing myself to toxins, although the toxins are going to come to you anyhow. But my body has high vitality to regenerate. Um, so, so gentle detox. One of my favorite ways is infrared sauna. So you can sweat out a lot of things, but of course you can use other things too. So that's my kind of my secret.
Dr. Gong, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your expertise. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, people can learn so much actually just by going through my YouTube channel, because like you said, I have a podcast and I put out not only my interviews with other doctors and experts, but also just more in-depth information on stem cell therapy. So today, what I mentioned is just scratching the surface. There's so much about it. This is why I'm teaching a 2-day course to doctors, because there's so much to talk about. So if people really want to become proficient, really understand the nitty-gritties, what does it mean when I have other people's DNA in my body? What about cell expansion? What does it do? What's the cancer correlation? And how many cells is necessary? How long does it take to see a benefit? Do I need to keep doing it? Or in different conditions, how do I approach it? So I have all those videos on YouTube, so people can just look up my name, Joy Kong, MD. That's my channel name, and just go through my videos. And then I have Instagram. Is under Dr_Joy_Kong, Kong. And I do post some videos, and I talk about peptides quite a bit, but people can follow me there. And then I have my website, joykongmd.com, and that includes everything I do, such as my clinic, my stem cell company, because we do provide the product to doctors all throughout the country, and then my podcast, my cream, and then the academy that where I teach doctors, and then my memoir. So I did write a memoir called Tiger of Beijing. If people are interested, and it's on Amazon, is on Audible as well. So it talks about how I got to America, which was not easy, because its first chapter was my visa rejection. So it's all about how you overcome obstacles and how you stay tenacious in seeking, right, in fulfilling your life's destiny. So that's the memoir.
Well, I'll drop those links in the description as well. Thank you again for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Till next time.
Thank you so much, Lucas. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for what you do.
Take care.